The woodwind section of the symphony orchestra is made up of 4 main instruments. The highest pitched is the flute, then comes the oboe, the clarinet, and finally the bassoon. As well as these, sometimes the bigger or smaller versions of these instruments are also used, particularly in orchestral music, which was written in the Romantic era. You might see the piccolo, the cor Anglais, the small E-flat clarinet, the bass clarinet, and the contrabassoon, which is also known as the double bassoon. If you see any of these instruments in the score, then the piece is going to be from the Romantic era or later. In a standard small-sized orchestra, typical of the classical era, the setup is usually to have 2 flutes, 2 oboes, 2 clarinets and 2 bassoons. But you can often find variations on this. The parts are called flute 1 and flute 2, oboe 1 and oboe 2, and so on. Each instrument is assigned 1 stave, and in a full score, the 2 parts are written together on that stave. If both players are supposed to play the same notes, the notes will usually only be written out once, but the score will be marked with A2 or zu 2 in German, which means both players. If only one player is supposed to play the notes, the part will be marked, for example, with flute 1, which means first flute only. You might see the word solo written as well, which usually means the part should be played only by the first player, but that it is also quite an important melody and should be easy to hear against the rest of the orchestra. When 2 players are needed, and they will be playing different notes, there are 2 ways to show this. Sometimes the notes are written to look like chords with 1 stem. This method is only used if the players have the same rhythm. If they have different rhythms to play, the second part is written below the first, with the stems pointing down, and the first part has stems pointing up. This makes it easier to see who should be playing what. Sometimes, for example, the parts might share a note or even cross over each other, but the stem direction will make it clear which notes belong to who. Here, for example, the first clarinet part has G, F, E and D, while the second clarinet has C, D, E and F. You might also sometimes see a strange-looking bar which seems to have 2 semibreves or whole notes in it, written right next to each other. This actually means that both players have the same single note. Here, both bassoonists have a semibreve D. The oboe, clarinet, bassoon and cor Anglais are all reed instruments. They make a noise when the player makes the reed vibrate. The oboe, bassoon and cor Anglais are all double reed instruments, whereas the clarinet and bass clarinet use a single reed. As with all the instruments, you need to be able to recognise the names of the instruments in Italian, French and German, as well as English. This table is printed out for you in the PDF for this lesson, but just take a quick look now and notice that most of the names are quite similar. The only ones which might seem odd are fagotto or fagot, and the French word for oboe, which looks like haut boys, is actually pronounced oboe.